So I've actually found, this is the actual act here, right? I've actually found the other act, not the Local Authorities Referendums Petitions Act 2011. This actually is the Local Government Act 2000. So according to Lewisham Council, this act is the one that about actual local referendums that aren't under the other act, which is the framework for changing the framework. The local petitions and referendums for changing the framework. But what Lewisham Council said on their website, hold on. So what it says on this Lewisham Council website is that the number of signatures a petition needs to trigger a local referendum. It says to trigger a local referendum, 5% of the electorate need to sign a petition. Find out what that figure is from Lewisham Borough Council. Well, every area has a electorate figure, and then you divide it by 100 and times it by 5, and that's the number. So underneath here it says local government petitions need the signatures of 5% of the electorate. On this page you can find out what that figure is for Lewisham. So this 5%, actually, in that 2011 Act, it says the exact wording is you need signatures equal to 5% of the electorate. I don't think that it has to be the signatures of the electorate. But what is very, very optimistic and promising is that without even reading this Act, it is the exact same figure and number as the other Act, the 2011 Act. So that means that the 2011 Act and that process is based on this one, and it is the same percentage. So I was right. I was correct. You can actually get a local referendum on anything with the 5%, this 5% number. And it doesn't have to be for a change in the mayor or the framework of the council, right? So I actually, again, I intuited that if there was another act, whatever it was, this number, then the procedure is based on an established procedure, right? So I always do that. I always intuit. Well, when you read a lot of law and realise what the Act is saying, right? Even though they've all got different particulars, some of the particulars and the details within the clauses are the same as other acts. Why? Because they're based on the same thing. It's the same thing in a different department or area, but it's the same procedure, and it's based on that procedure that has been for a long time, and that is why. So, hold on a second. So here, actually, I've downloaded it. This is actually what I was interested. This is what I wanted to find. I guess I could have found it a while ago, but to be honest, I don't think that it matters that I found this. In fact, I was speaking to a girl who I met on the Stonehenge Facebook page, all to do with the Saving the Stonehenge Tunnel, and she said that she got a degree in politics, right? So I asked her, I goes, could you do a bit of research? Like she supported the Stop Stonehenge Tunnel campaign, and she signed the petition, and she was banging on about, saving Stonehenge. So I'm like, oh, if she's got a degree in politics, and if she supports saving Stonehenge, then surely, I could ask her, could you find out what this act is, if there's another act, because, I haven't found it yet. And she went away, and she came back, and, she didn't seem that interested in finding it, which I found quite ironic, seeing though that she was, one of these advocates of, one of these new age hippie ladies who was supporting Stonehenge. So I've actually found the act because it tells you on Lewisham Council's website, and as I've just shown you what it said on Lewisham Council website, it actually is the exact same figure as the other act. So what they've done is, in the 2011, which is they copied the procedure and principle from this act, right? Now, this is the act that Lewisham Council are referring to, and I haven't read it all yet, and I'm not going to read all of it either, because there's 233 pages, right? But what I'm going to do is, there will only be, this is like the entire Local Government Act 2000, so we just want to know about local referendums. So what you do is, to save time, so I'm not interested in the entire workings in council government. We're interested in petitioning the council. That's what we're interested in. And we're interested in political rights. We're not running the council. I mean, if I had to read the entire act and learn it off by heart, then you would have thought that I might as well be on the council. I mean, that's their job to know it off by heart and to tell us the truth about it. So what we'll do is we'll type here in the word referendum, right? Well, my keyboard's misbehaving. Wow, referendum. There are 140. It's mentioned 146 times. I don't. And the word local is mentioned 1,567 times. I want to find the section on this local referendum procedure. So what I will type in is, I will type in 5%. No instances of 5% in this. I'll type the number 5. All right, I'll type in percent. 0. No matches found. Right, okay, we'll type in petition then. Right. Oh, it said 12, then 24. Right, I only have to search 24 instances of the word petition now. So, we'll check these 24 instances of the word petition. No return of elected mayor. Oh, that's to do with electing mayors. Next. Referendum following petition. So, here we go. Actually, it's, look, can you see how many times there are yellow here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? And then there was that previous one, 12. So 12 of the 24 mentions of the word petition are just in this little section here. I'm just going to skip through them all and see what the other section is. Referendum following petition. You see, it says, I'm not even going to go into the little small details of it yet, but already it's saying referendum following a petition. So that the referendum's not the petition. Let's get this clear. The referendum itself is a thing. The referendum itself is a thing, right? What you're doing when you're petitioning for the referendum is you are doing a different thing to get the other thing. Like when you save up money to buy a car, or you save up money to buy a jacket. The jacket is the jacket. The money is the money. To get the jacket, you use the money. But when you've got the jacket, right, the jacket is not buying the jacket, right? So the petition for a referendum is going about getting evidence of public concern that there should be a referendum, right? It's not the referendum, because a referendum is different. The referendum is the council, not you, the council say, right, we, the council authority, not me and you, the council authority with the taxpayers' money, we are going to ask every single person in Shropshire what their opinion is on this or that. And we're going to send them all documents and leaflets and have polling stations or whatever, however they want to do it, by postal vote or on the internet. And we're going to get the votes from them. And this is not like a public consultation that they do all the time. It's that is a thing, a functional thing, right? That when we are going to ask them for that thing, right, that's us doing it. We are petitioning for it. But you've got to prove that there's a need, a desire, a strong need or desire to have that. And that's your petition. But you ask people who have a right, privilege or interest in that. But you're petitioning for the council to do something, which is have the referendum, which is to ask all the local people. But the petition to ask them, right? The petition to ask them for it, who's got the right to petition? Well, all British subjects, everyone in England has got the right to petition the King, His Majesty's government. What is Shropshire Council? It's His Majesty's government, shropshire.gov.uk. It's His Majesty's Palace of Westminster government, Shrewsbury branch, with his local chamber, council chamber. All matters for Shropshire refer to Shropshire Council, right? Hello, I'm in Kent. Is that central government? Hello, operator, can you get me the King? I've got a dispute with something in Shropshire. I was there the other day. Oh well, you have to ring up the council. I've got some ministers in charge. Let me put you through. This is it. Referendum following a petition. So everyone has got a right to petition His Majesty's government, whichever department or region of the government it concerns. So we'll go through all this now. I'm just going to go through these last few. What's this section here on about here? Support a petition, manner in a petition prescribed 1924. Right, so all these 24 mentions are pretty much within these sections here. So I'll go back to the second instance, right? We'll go to the second instance. Right. I'll go through it. So I've never seen this before, but I'm guessing that it's going to be pretty much what it says in that 2011 Act, but for whatever you want, not just for framework for framework. And I've got a feeling that it's not going to say that it's not going to tell you that people in the area can't sign a petition, because I can tell you that because it states on Wiltshire Council and in the guidance, in the general guidance, it says that if you use the facilities or work in the area, you can sign the petition. So I know that people from outside the area can sign the petitions for a referendum, because it doesn't say that they can't. But it's been very vague. It says, oh, well, if they use the facilities, well, if they use the facilities, what happens if I go to Lightwater Valley once every 3 years? I'm using the facilities in, Ripon or whatever, this is it. It's like a catch-20. It's like a red herring, I've got a right to use the toilet facilities in a remote village in Lincolnshire if I happen to be passing through and going for a pee. This is the thing. So, referendum following the petition. The Secretary of State may make regulations and provision in connection with requiring a local authority which receives a petition which complies with provisions of the regulations to hold a referendum. Such circumstances may be prescribed regulations on whether the authority should. So this is the Secretary of State. So actually, even in this first part here, so in part one, what part one is actually telling us, right, is that he's talking about the Secretary of State. When a petition's presented to a local area, but then it's talking about the Secretary of State can have them to have a referendum. So that is ringing alarm bells for me already. Do you know why? Because if the Secretary of State for Transport knew that Petitions Committee had a petition for Stonehenge Tunnel, which had over 200,000 signatures on it, Why didn't he say, oh, well, that's a lot of signatures of concern, why don't we have a local referendum in Wiltshire? They didn't. They didn't have a local referendum in Wiltshire when it was clearly in gross excess to 5% of the Wiltshire electorate, with many, many people with an interest in that site. Well, people from all around the world as well. So that's ringing alarm bells, because this is saying that central government are playing a role in this now. And also, another thing that I noticed reading the first paragraph, part 1 of this, is that it's all about once they've received the petition so far. The first part of this first paragraph, is already talking about after a petition has been received, getting into the referendum. It's not actually telling you about it's not saying about the petition itself. It's just saying about, okay, you've received a petition and there's a referendum. It's not telling us any information about the petition and what you can and can't do and collecting the petition itself, is it? It's all about, it's like when you start reading this paragraph 1 here, that's the moment you hand them it. It's already done and collected. It's already handed. And that is, to me, that is the same moment, the same action as like in the Inquiries Act 2005, when it says, should it appear to a minister that there is evidence, strong evidence, of facts and circumstances that should merit an inquiry, then he can have a motion to hold one, or by evidence of a large amount of public concern, which would be a petition with 200,000 signatures on it or something. So should it appear to him? How is it going to appear to him? Well, it didn't appear from nowhere. Someone asks him for it, probably, by either someone goes into his constituency surgery and says, oh, can I have it'd be all right, wouldn't it, if you popped into the MP surgery, by yourself? Oh, excuse me, I'd like a public inquiry. Oh, how much is that going to cost? Oh, about £5 million. Oh, of course, I'll arrange it with Mr. Corbyn tomorrow. That was very easy, wasn't it? I've got a very strong case here. Look, all this investigation and evidence I've got. Well, is there anyone else asking for it? No, just me. But it's a strong case. It's compelling. In fact, it says that this, is very, very serious. Look at these fingerprints I've got. Whatever. This is it. Or you could walk in, with a massive 10 boxes of, printed petition signatures on there, 100,000 signatures. It's very, very compelling. The public want this. They want you to look into this matter. Well, have you got any evidence that anything actually happened? No, but they've got a feeling that something might have happened, and you're the man who's going to find out when you start the inquiry. There's like 100,000 people think that there could be something wrong, but we're not quite sure what yet, but we want you to try and find out. That's what we want you to look into, So, anyway, getting back to this. Regulations under Section 1 may in particular include provision in the form of content of petitions, including provisions for petitions in or electronic form. So you can accept it in. So it can be electronic. So the minimum number of local government electors. Right. So now B. As to the minimum number of local government electors. Right. Okay. So this is quite serious now. Because this is possibly... because the minimum of government electors for local authorities area who must support any petition presented to the authority during any period specified in the regulations. That's the minimum number of local government electors. Right, local government electors for a local authorities area who must support any petition presented to the authority during any period specified in the regulations. The ironic thing about this is, in the 1688 Bill of Rights, it says for petitioning, it's the right of the subjects to petition the king, and all prosecutions and also commitments for such petitioning are illegal. That suggests that, why is that? Because in the Professor Karen Bowie paper, in the history of petitioning, they were trying to hold people to loads of ridiculous procedures and rules, like, charging them money. That's one of them. They were trying to charge people money to submit petitions. And then, there were the 1661 tumultuous act was saying that, you know, if it's just over 20 signatures, then you've got to go through the grand large part of a grand jury, or three justices have to look at it, and then they had a lot of the articles and so forth. But they really stopped all these ridiculous processes and procedures. You know, no, you've only got 10 days, or you're running out of time, you've only got 6 months. Well, this is the thing. On the main central government petition website, you only get 6 months, right, to run the petition. It says here they can prescribe regulations and whatever time period, but how have you got a period prescribed? How can you have electronic petition site, right, which is giving you 6 months to collect signatures, right? But then in Walser's, Laura, whatever you call her, with 8 months worth of signatures through change.org for tampon tax, and puts it on the table. Oh, there's 300,000 signatures here, Mrs. May. How long did it take you to collect those? Oh, well, 8 months. Well, what about the people who only had 6 months? Well, that's a bit of discrimination there, isn't it? There's some people were given 6 months to petition the government, and some were given 8 months. That can't be right. That seems like they're holding people to certain commitments on the electronic site, and other people, they're not. That, to me, is the corruption, the con, the deep con of all this legislation. Because according to the 1688 bill, you can't be held to any commitments, and they abolished that tumultuous petitioning act as well. So that's my first claim of evidence why I don't think that it has to be the local electors. And contrary to this is legislation, remember? So we're getting right into these clauses of legislation now, right? And already it's contradicting what the government publish, because the government are publishing that it's not a proper legal procedure, it's just a formal request. And then they're saying that you can sign the petition if you use the facilities, or sign petitions to the council if you use facilities, or have an interest or work in the area but don't live in the area. So that general guidance of those local petition sites is in contradiction to this, surely. I find a lot of contradiction in these laws. They don't seem to comply with the statutes. They don't seem compatible with the statutes. And there's a lot of contradiction going on in the general guidance as well. So let's check this out. As to the minimum number of local government electors for local authorities, for or in connection with requiring an officer of a local authority to publish the number of local government electors for the authority's area who must support any petition presented. As to the way in which the local government electors for authority's area are to support a petition. As to the way in which they, including provision enabling local government electors to support petitions by telephone or electronic means. So, what? Right, riddle me this then. On point D, right? Tell me, right, riddle me this. Have you seen, when you type in petitions on any local council website, and let's use Wiltshire and Shrewsbury, for example, because they've both got very similar, it's like they've got the same website designer or something, it says for e-petitions, you've got to sign up to the website, you've got to register, and then you can sign it, right? But whereabouts on there does it tell you can sign it by telephone? There is a telephone number actually on the Shrewsbury one. There is a telephone number, but that's just contact number. It says here's a contact number for Democratic Services. It doesn't actually say you can sign this petition by telephone by ringing up. It doesn't say that you can sign it by ringing up. It just gives you the number and says you can contact them, And it doesn't actually, it gives you the address to write into them if you need to write to them. But does it say either sign this petition by writing in or by telephone or by here signing electronically. It doesn't say that. It actually makes you go through a ridiculous procedure of registering with the website. Like you've got to input an email, receive the email, then you've got to confirm your email thing and then log in and then go sign it, right? And if you're having difficulty doing that, you know, it puts people off. It doesn't actually say on that page, oh, by the way, here's the phone number and here's the address, and you can just simply ring us up and say you consent to the petition, tell us which one it is, or write into us to sign it. It doesn't actually say, well, from what I've read, it doesn't. If I'm wrong on that, you can, you know, correct me if I'm wrong on that. It does give the phone number and it does give the address because I printed it out, but it doesn't say that you can sign by those methods. D. Eats. As to the action which may or may not or must be taken by a local authority in connection with a petition, well, that's the request. By the way, all these Change.org petitions and all these 38 Degrees petitions, remember, a lot of them are getting acted on by a lot of local authorities on many matters, like whether it's from simply park benches, getting a new swing or slide in the park, or whatever it is, you know, save some trees or whatever. A lot of these these independent websites like Change.org and 38 Degrees are getting action by the governments. Although I know that Heather Peacock handed in a petition with 2,000 signatures and the councillor said, oh, some of these people aren't from our area, won't accept it, which is ironic to say that on Wiltshire and Shrewsbury it says that, you know, people who use the facilities in an area or work there, who don't live there, can sign. How did that councillor, I think it was John Taylor, did he even ring them up and ask them? Did he go through the 2,000 signatures and ring them up? Do you use facilities in this area? You know, excuse me, have you used any facilities in our area? Have you been to the toilet? Have you been to any shops in our area? I doubt it. And I doubt he's going to get in contact with them on a Change.org or 38 Degrees petition when it hasn't got their email address, because he can't email them. It's just got their postcode and name. On a lot of they might have changed the website, but when I did Change.org and downloaded the data sheet, there were no email addresses because they didn't want to give them to us. And you've got the right to the data if it's your petition. As to which may or must be taken, all right, the action. As to the manner in which the petition is to be presented to the local authority. Well, what manner is it? How would you? You don't need to present it to the local authority if they're running it on their own website. As to the verification of any petition, well, it's to be verified by the data on it, and if the data is incomplete, then you can't verify it, can you? And notice that it's not this is the council verifying it. Oh, as to the verification of, well, who's going to verify it? Are they telling Change.org to verify it, or 38 Degrees staff when they're a third party? I don't think that they even have a right to verify it, because you're not petitioning them, you're petitioning the local government. That's the authority that you're asking. As to the date on which, or the time which a referendum must be held, well, that's fair enough, because that's the actual referendum. That is, if you're going to have a referendum, when it should be held. But remember, right, it says that the Secretary of State, it's the Secretary of State, when a petition is on the Secretary of State who's directing a lot of this. As to any action which may or not must be taken by a local authority after a referendum, fair enough, or for in connection with enabling the Secretary of State in the event of any failure by a local authority to make an action permitted or required by virtue of the regulations to take that action. Provision made by virtue of subsection 2. Oh, and by the way, even if Robert McBride hasn't himself asked for a referendum or given any particulars for which it should be held or over what matter, I have. And I've added that to the petition. I've added the request to it in writing. And you can amalgamate petitions. Every individual who signs it and adds some writing is petitioning, and it is... Every time a person signs it, really, they're amalgamating their own statement to it, really. So, you know, that my request is fulfilling this. As to which amendment we've taken a look. For or in connection with enabling the Secretary of State in the event of any failure by local authority to take any action required. So, provision made by virtue of subsection 2 may in particular apply or reproduce with or without any modifications any provisions of or made under this chapter. Provision made by virtue may in particular apply or reproduce with or without modifications. With or without modifications. Provisions made under subsection 2 may in particular apply or reproduce with or without modifications. That sounds dodgy to me. Does that mean that the local council authority can make modifications? Why would you want them to make modifications to a petition, to a legal case that you bring into them? The number of local government electors mentioned in subsection 2b is to be calculated at such times as may be provided by regulations under this section, and unless such regulations otherwise provide, is to be 5% of the number of local government electors at each of those times. So this suggests it doesn't have to be 5%. Well, who's going to stipulate that? Unless otherwise provided. Well, that means that you can, if that's right, that means that according to these of forward regulations and what you're asking, it effectively, if I'm not completely and totally retarded beyond, all capabilities of brain cells, does that not mean that you can write a petition saying, we're petitioning the council for a referendum and we think that we should only need to have ourselves, we're going to say that we only need to match 1% of the Shropshire Council. In fact, according to this, if I'm not absolutely and completely retarded beyond all means of intellect and logic, I could say and write the petition that we are petitioning the council on our terms and we don't require any percentage of the local electorate to sign it at all. We don't require any percentage of the local electorate to sign it. We want a referendum with our terms are that we're getting, equal to 5% from non-local residents. Now, if you want that mind bender of logic, which, the tricks of the trade of, these people who write these acts, then that would then validate all of those local guidances on those websites that say that you don't need to be a local resident to sign it. Because this is saying that, effectively saying that, you can override these above points. And remember that what I said in the other videos when it comes to, any proceedings can be judged on a point of law or the opinion of the peers, the opinion of people. That means that they can ignore and override the point of law. Like in the Ian Bray case, the jury disregarded the law. Effectively, this is saying that you can disregard all the rules and you can submit a petition with your own rules. Which, if you got subjects of the realm signing it from England who have all got the right privilege to petition the king, so apparently they can make up their own terms according to this. That's how I read it. If I'm wrong on that, then you can correct me on it. Which is just generally like you usually find in the law, particularly when it comes to Rees-Mogg and whether it should be on GB News or not. Because some of those acts basically write themselves off. There are some clever clauses in them which say blah, 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 but then it's all invalid. If you've got a certain privilege or right which, happens to override it all or something like that, Section 1 is subject to Section 9 and 8, effect of order requiring and giving effect to referendum on change of mayor and cabinet. So that, but the thing is that 5, they've written an entire new act for that. Remember that this act here is only in the year 2000, and remember in 2011 they decided to make a separate act for election for changing mayors and so forth. So this has been updated to that. Referendum following directions. The Secretary of State may make regulations to make provision for connection with enabling the Secretary of State, which include provision as to the date at which the time. Isn't this referendum following direction and referendum following petition? This is like from directions from Secretary of State. Referendum following order. Made by order, make provision requiring every local authority or every authority file description authority specific. Right. So this is when we haven't petitioned for a local referendum. This is when, like, Parliament are saying that we're going to have a referendum. For example, like for Europe, for leaving Europe, right? So central government, decide they're going to have a referendum on Europe, and then obviously all the local councils have to participate and engage in that. That's that, I think it will be. And the direct referendum following direction is basically, so further provision with respect to referendums. If a local authority holds a referendum under this chapter, well, what other chapter? What? If a local authority holds a referendum under this chapter, well, what if they don't hold one under this chapter? What if they hold one under something else? Referendum A, it may not hold or be required to hold another referendum under this chapter. Referendum B within the period of 10 years, beginning with the date unless subsection 2 or 3 applies. So if you have a referendum on a matter, what are they doing about leaving the Europe then? Is it been 10 years since we voted on Europe, leaving the Euro? This subsection applies if referendum A was held by the authority of virtue of section. Oh, well, that's to do with that mayor thing, that 9 thing. Change of mayor or cabinet. Yeah, well, they've got a new act for all that. Result referendum. Approve the proposals, blah, blah, blah. Result of referendum. Regulations, order, directions made. Referendum may be held. Voting in and conduct of referendums. Persons entitled to vote in a referendum held by a local authority. Right. So now you're talking about people entitled to vote in the referendum. Well, that is people who live in the area, isn't it? Right? But that's not people entitled to petition the king. Who's entitled to petition the king? His Majesty's government, which is the authority of the mace, or any of the ministers in central government who can, according to the other part back here, refer it to the local council. So according to this, if you're petitioning, according to this, you can proxy it, defer it through central government. So if everyone's got a right to petition central government in the country, and then but it concerns a certain area, then the government can do it there, which is like what you do with Stonehenge Tunnel in Wiltshire. When they got under 200,000 signatures, why didn't they do it? That's what that's saying. So, this is actually about the referendum, actually having the right to vote in a local referendum if you live in the area. But remember that the petition is not the referendum. The very start of this, What I like about this is the very, very start of it. It says, as the petition's handed in, so where did it come from? Who signed it? That is literally like the Inquiries Act. I mean, what if they want an inquiry into the conduct of Wiltshire Council? What if you want a public inquiry into the conduct of Wiltshire Council, right? Who can petition, central government for an inquiry into Wiltshire Council? What happens if they've been giving out a lot of parking tickets dodgily, for example? People from Warrington were going to Shrewsbury and got loads of dodgy parking tickets, so they all petitioned for an inquiry into, the council. Petition the Minister, Secretary of State, and then he says, okay, we'll have to have a referendum, we'll have an inquiry. Should it appear to the Minister, he can direct one. If there's a lot of concern for one, you can't, so you can defer it through, it's like swings and roundabouts, this. Secretary of State may make may he? Well, good for him. Provision for combination polls at the referendum, chapter by polls, regulations may apply, incorporate with or without modifications, exceptions, provisions. Regulations and switching to a fee may apply or incorporate with or without modifications or exceptions any provisions from any enactment whenever passed or made relating to elections or referendums. You have got to be kidding me. You've got to be absolutely joking me. So, part 4 there of this 9MG says that you can apply any enactment provisions which will apply. So what if you're using the right to petition? That is the right of the subjects to petition the King, His Majesty's government, and all commitments, any commitment that you'll be able to is unlawful, which literally writes off the entire act, which, is the comedy of comedies. Regulations under Section 2 may, in particular, include provision as to the question to be asked in a referendum, as to the publicity to be given in connection with the referendum, including the publicity to be given with respect to the consequences of the referendum. That's giving notice to the public about the limitation of expenditure in connection with the referendum and the creation of criminal offences in connection with the limitation of such expenditure. Well, they're only allowed to, elections and referendums should be free, though. The funny thing about the 1688 Bill of Rights is that elections should be free, but also petitions should be free. So it's not meant to cost anything, or it's not meant to cost us anything. But the thing is that they're not allowed to use over a certain amount of money. The amount they've got to use is actually, it tells you in that 2011 Act. But what the thing is, and this is, I'm saying about us, this is what I believe to be the truth. It says in the 1688 Bill of Rights that elections should be free. But the thing is, if they have only got to spend a certain amount of money on publicity and printing voting ballots and letting people know where to vote, all that publicity stuff, this is not the money we're spending on the actual petition to get the referendum, by the way. The elections should be free, but it's not free though, is it? Because if you think about it, even if it's paid for by the taxpayer, even if that money comes out of, council tax or whatever, but we've paid for it, it still costs something. It's cost us tax money. It isn't free because, even if you've got volunteers at the polling station, and even if, the councils own all the schools that it's held in, so therefore, they didn't have to rent the schools out because they owned them, for example, the council, the government owned the schools or whatever. And even if all the people are voluntary, all the paper and the ballots and so forth, where's the money come from? If it should be free, shouldn't that all be donated? You know, shouldn't it be? You know, shouldn't the, where's all the materials coming from? Aren't they supposed to like get it for free? You know, isn't someone supposed to donate it or something? You know, I think when it says elections ought to be free, maybe it means that we don't have to pay extra for them. You know, at least they're out of public expenses. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. But that it's not just elections; it's petitioning and referendums ought to be free. But they're not free though if you're paying from out of the tax money, because it's still an expense, isn't it? That's an interesting point. As to the conduct of the authority, members, the authority and officers of the authority in relation to a referendum, as to when, where and how voting referendum is to take place, and as to the votes cast in the referendum to be counted and disregarded for alterations in electors and for the making of regulations of this order. Referendum on change of mayor. Well, we don't want. That's not interested in that. Right. So all that is actually about the referendum itself. There isn't actually anything on the procedures or rules for running the petition or collecting the petition signatures, as I thought. And after all that, what it says about 5% of the electorate of the area, then it literally effectively says that if you apply an enactment or whatever, you can override it or disregard it. Or when the people petitioning, it can make up their own, or we'll decide what the rules are going to be, because we're petitioning. We're petitioning for. It seems like you can, tell the council that you want a referendum and you want it to be like this, and this is what the rules are going to be for it, and we're going to decide, who can sign it and what. That's what I read it as, and that would be in line